everybody, my name is Kat and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things horror. And I'm jumping on here today to do a quick video. I wasn't planning on doing a video this week, but there's been a lot of news coming out of CinemaCon, and specifically there's been a lot of news and trailers around Blumhouse and their upcoming releases and their plans for new horror releases for the next few years. One of these trailers was for their remake for Speak No Evil. Now, in the beginning of the year, I talked about how their remake of Speak No Evil was my least anticipated horror film of this year. And I say that because I absolutely love the original Speak No Evil. It is a Danish horror film that came out in, I think, 2021 or 2022. And as far as contemporary horror films go, this is one of the best. And so I was very disappointed and nervous to see that Blumhouse felt the need to do an Americanized remake. So this is not going to be a trailer reaction, but I will give you my thoughts on it. So watching the trailer, I did have to laugh at the fact that Blumhouse was just straight up spoiling plot twists within the trailer for their remake. So if you have not seen the original Speak No Evil, I highly recommend checking out the original before watching any Blumhouse promotions, because yeah, they just spoil one of the biggest twists in the film right in the middle of the trailer. And I was just like, Blumhouse, what are you doing? Why? Why do you do this? But I think it just goes to show that Blumhouse, like, they don't care about the narrative. They don't really care about telling a good story. I think at one point they did, but right now their sole focus is like, let's get butts in seats and make as much money as we can. So it makes sense that they are going to want to take the most horrifying and terrifying parts of the film and put it into their promotional material. The problem with that is that the reason why Speak No Evil works as well as it does is because it's such a slow burn, right? It's building up to these very horrific moments. It's building up to the big reveals. And it's one of those things where once the protagonists realize what kind of situation they're in, it's already too late. It's too late to turn back. And that's where the horror comes in. When you're just putting that all into the trailer, like, you're just ruining the best part about the movie. And look, the argument can be made that remakes are not anything new, especially within the horror genre. And you can point to evidence to the fact that some of our greatest horror filmmakers, if you look at their catalog, you'll find that some of the best films that they've done are remakes. So what really is the problem here? I think for me, the thing that distinguishes like a good remake or perhaps a necessary remake from an unnecessary one is really the vision and intention behind the remake. Now, if you were to look at remakes such as The Thing or The Fly, these are reimagined versions of the story, right? You have the original Thing from Another World and the original Fly of the 1950s. Those films are classics in their own right, but I think what Carpenter and Cronenberg do so well with their films is that their remakes are not just like copy paste of the original 1950s films. Yes, they're keeping the original premise and then expanding it. They're expanding the world, they're expanding the horror elements. Obviously, these are two films that deal a lot with body horror, so there's a lot of special effects work going on, but they're also expanding the world in terms of the characters and just the psychology of the characters as well. So I think that's what the remakes do. Good remakes will take something that either maybe worked okay or didn't work that well the first time around, and we'll take the parts that worked and then expand upon them, make them even better, make them even greater, intensify the horror. And that's not what I'm seeing from the Speak No Evil remake. As I've already said, the original Speak No Evil is brilliant. It builds tension really well, but what it also does is really tap into this, I think, fairly universal human thing that we can all relate to, which is that thing where you will put yourself in uncomfortable situations in order to make other people happy or not to appear rude or mean, even when your gut instinct is telling you to run away as fast as you can. And that's what the film is about. The film is all about the worst case scenario of what can happen when you don't trust that gut instinct. As someone who considers themselves a people pleaser, the film really spoke to me in that sense. I was watching the characters, and even though I was yelling at the screen and telling them to run away, there was also a part of me that was like, I could definitely see myself getting in this situation. And it is such a bleak film. I mean, the ending, I thought about that ending for days after I watched it the first time around, and it's still something that I think about on a pretty frequent basis. Just bleak. It is a mean little film, but it gets its message across very well and very effectively. And I guess Jason Blum saw that, and instead of thinking like, let's make our films on the same level as this one, his thought was, I'm just gonna buy the rights for this and then make my own version of the exact same film. This is why we can't have nice things. So that's my biggest thing with this remake, is that there's really no reason to be remaking Speak No Evil. It's perfect in the way that it exists. Leave it alone. And from the trailer, it doesn't look like they're trying to do a situation with like The Thing or The Fly, right, where they're trying to expand it in any way, or maybe trying to build upon the themes that the original talked about. It does look like Lifetime version copy paste of the exact same thing. Maybe we'll change a few locations here and there, but overall it looks like it's just going to be a very watered down version of the exact same story. This isn't even like a Michael Haneke Funny Games scenario where you have the same filmmaker that is doing the European version and then the American version. If that was the case here, then maybe that would be an interesting experiment. Also, I'm sorry, no hate to James McAvoy. I really like him as an actor. But I feel like when it comes to horror films specifically, there's a time and a place to use well-known actors. I know he's done his stuff with M. Night, and those movies were fine. I just feel like a film like Speak No Evil, for me, what worked so well about the original was that I didn't recognize the actors. To be fair, they might be well-known actors in Danish cinema, and I'm just not familiar with them. But it was that unfamiliarity that just added to the creepiness of the characters. So when I'm watching the trailer for the remake, I'm not feeling as creeped out because my mind is like, yeah, it's James McAvoy. So I feel like it is a story that benefits from having more unknown actors. My other thing with this remake is that the original film didn't come out that long ago. It's only been, what, 2 years? Like, why do we need a remake of it so soon after it was released? Why do we need it Americanized? I haven't seen the original since I first saw it, but I feel like there was English language in the original film.
I'm a vegetarian.
I insist. I insist.
So yeah, what's the point of this new version? I just don't get it. Americanized remakes just feel like a thing of the past. Like, I think it worked in the early 2000s when you had remakes of like The Ring or The Grudge, mainly because, well, I do think those films, even being remakes, also did do their own thing. But aside from that, there was also the thing that, you know, in the early 2000s, it was still kind of difficult to find the original European or Japanese horror films. I was only able to see the original Ring You after The Ring came out and was a huge success, because then the video stores were like, oh, okay, we can get the original and put that product out there, and then people will go to it because this other movie is so popular. So at least there was like some sort of benefit to Americanizing a really popular European or Japanese horror film. However, it doesn't really make sense in today's day and age of streaming. The original is available to watch on Shudder. You can find it on Amazon Prime or YouTube or any of the other streaming services and rent it or buy it. So it also doesn't make sense that they would want to remake and Americanize something that is both so new and so readily available. I mean, look, maybe it'll be good. There is a scenario in this universe where maybe Blumhouse does do something to expand on the brilliance of the original. And look, if you're excited about this film, if you watch the trailer and you're like, yes, I want to go see this, that's great, right? I'm not judging anyone here because, look, at the end of the day, I am also going to be going to the theaters and seeing this, if only just to do a review video for it. I think the other layer to this and why it feels so frustrating is just because Blumhouse has been on this trend of wanting to remake any property that they can get a hold of, and they're sacrificing like really good original storytelling in the process. And even when they are doing original films now, like Night Swim or Imaginary, even those are just these very cheaply made cash grabs. So a lot of my feelings about this is also coming from the fact that I just don't trust Blumhouse as a production company anymore. They have lost my trust. There was also news that came out this week that Blumhouse will be remaking or rebooting or doing a sequel to the Blair Witch Project. And within the article announcing that, it was also said that They have now partnered with Lionsgate, and there is plans being made for them to remake or reboot or requel or whatever all of the original horror property that Lionsgate has. So they're not stopping this trend of remakes anytime soon. They are hoping for another Halloween 2018. And I was posting about all of these things on my stories on Instagram and had several of you message me also expressing your frustrations around this endless remake cycle. And the conversation that I had with multiple people came back to the same thing, that it's just really disappointing that Blumhouse is choosing to do this, because they actually used to make really great films. I was joking with some people that I miss the early Paranormal Activity days. And look, I know that those films are not for everyone, and those films were also cash grabs in their own right, but at least they were fun. Like, at least they were trying to be somewhat entertaining. At least they were trying to have a somewhat cohesive story, even if it was somewhat convoluted. But they also did really great original horror films like Insidious. Of course, you have things like Get Out. One of you reminded me that they did The Gift, that I completely forgot about. Even their non-horror properties like Whiplash, because yes, Jason Blum was a producer for Whiplash, and that film is brilliant. And it's like, how do you go from making something as great as Whiplash to what you've been putting out the past few years? I mean,
evil dies tonight!
I'm not a member of the damn patriarchy.
I think they're going to be really scared to get back into a swimming pool after watching Night Swim.
yeah, I think a lot of this is really just their response to what's going on with the film industry right now. Obviously, the film industry is in a very weird place. I think we can see that as consumers of these films, as audience members. I know from speaking to people that I know that work in the industry, it's an odd time with them dealing with the aftermath of the strikes last year and the weird economic times and artificial intelligence. But like, the industry as a whole is just in a weird spot. So I think that's why we're still seeing a reliance on just old IP that the studio heads know already work. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And in a lot of the conversations I've been having with horror fans, right, people have been expressing their disappointment that more original storytelling isn't getting out there. And I agree. And what I will also say is that there is still opportunity to find and engage with original horror storytelling. It starts with watching and supporting indie films like the original Speak No Evil, but there's also other platforms. I mean, you can look on YouTube, right? Look up something like Alter, for example. They distribute horror short films from indie filmmakers. They have a whole catalog of original horror programming that you could watch. So exploring stuff like that, also looking and seeing if, you know, there are any like indie horror film festivals in your area. I know living in South Florida, I can tell you that there is a festival. It used to be called Sick and Wrong, but now I think it's called Bizarro Land or something like that. It's a small festival in Orlando. It's run by one guy, but he programs some of the weirdest, most disturbing, outlandish short films that you will find. You also have festivals like Nightmare Film Festival, that's in Ohio, is really great. So I think that's another great way to go out and find original horror films and also to support indie filmmakers. These festivals tend to not get a lot of press because, you know, they're not the like Sundances or the South by Southwests, or even like bigger horror festivals like Overlook or Fantasia, for example. But they are out there, so I would highly encourage you to look around and see if there are any close by in your area. But the other thing too is that going to these smaller festivals, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg like going to a Sundance or a South by Southwest, and even when you purchase everything, there's still no guarantee that you're going to get into the movies that you want to watch. So I highly recommend checking out indie horror festivals. That's a big goal of mine for this year and the next several years. It sounds a little cliche to say, but I do think it's probably the best remedy against what Blumhouse is doing. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to say on that. I feel like I talked for even longer than I meant to, but we'll see. I think the Speak No Evil remake comes out in August, so yeah, we'll just have to see. In the meantime, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.